With less than a month until the US midterm elections, two landmark incidents affecting the energy sector have put the Biden administration at loggerheads with a number of other countries. The media dubbed them a diplomatic slap in the face and specifically targeted against the US. So what happened? Saudi Arabia, Germany, France, and many more. Where does the US stand nowadays in its relations with countries around the world? We'll talk more about energy diplomacy and how it influences the global market. I'm Saina. Welcome to Factstyle. First, let's quickly recap a few highlight-grabbing instances. On October 5th, a group of some of the world's most powerful oil producers, such as Saudi Arabia, defying U.S. pressure, announced a deep cut in oil production. The move was designed to raise oil prices that had fallen in recent months and appeared to have come as a shock to Washington. Because for months, the Biden administration had been pushing for the group to produce more amid high oil prices and a surging inflation in the U.S., which is the world's largest oil consumer. Immediately afterwards, senior officials of some European allies also spoke out openly against the U.S. for the astronomical prices it charges for liquefied natural gas, or LNG, as the continent's energy crisis threatens to spiral out of control this winter. The recent incidents have shone a light on where the U.S. stands today in its relations with some countries, and it has been a long time coming. Let's first have a closer look at the background and repercussions of these incidents. The major oil-producing countries that made a collective decision this time are members of a group, often referred to as OPEC+. This month's decision has been so closely watched by the world for multiple reasons. This was the group's first in-person meeting in more than 2 years. And the plan to slash oil production by 2 million barrels per day is the biggest cut since the start of the pandemic. And the reduction is equivalent to about 2% of global oil demand, which is powerful enough to push oil price much higher to a point that concerns the U.S. In essence, the production cut hurts the U.S., but will raise revenue for all the OPEC Plus members. And who are these members? Well, there are 23 countries involved. Certain OPEC member countries such as Algeria, Angola, Congo, and Iraq, and 10 non-OPEC oil-producing countries, including Azerbaijan, Malaysia, and Mexico. A number of media outlets reported that OPEC Plus announcement came as a sign of failure, undercutting U.S. diplomatic outreach and efforts. Accompanied by worsening consumer sentiments worldwide over energy prices and shortages, the landmark decision reached among OPEC Plus countries, including Saudi Arabia and Russia, was described by the Financial Times as a dangerous breach between oil exporters and West, especially the U.S., with an aim to upend the world's energy order again. But for the oil-producing countries, they don't see the decision as being politically motivated or as seeking to upend anything. What they were seeking, as OPEC Secretary General Hassan Al-Ghais put it, was to provide security and stability to the energy markets. As an OPEC keeping, Saudi Arabia also rejected Washington's criticism in a statement on Twitter. It said, all decisions have been reached through consensus with other OPEC Plus countries based purely on economic considerations. It pointed out that the U.S. suggested cuts being delayed by a month, which confirmed a Wall Street Journal report quoting unnamed Saudi officials, saying the U.S. sought to delay the cuts until just before the November 8th midterm elections. It described the move as a political gambit by the Biden administration ahead of the vote, instead of pressuring OPEC Plus solely for economic concerns. The White House denied Saudi Arabia's claims and warned of consequences against the specific countries. But Saudi Arabia caused this unfair, as the decision was made by the entire coalition, including not only Iran, Venezuela, and Russia, but also some friends and even allies of the United States, such as Kuwait, Iraq, Libya, and Mexico. So the question here really is, why should OPEC Plus or any specific country be faulted for defending its own commercial and trade interests rather than revolving around particular demands of the US? I mean, what exactly is the reason? On the other hand, in spite of the economic considerations of Saudi Arabia and other countries, as well as the current balance of supply and demand in oil market, the US insisted that OPEC Plus increase production to help curb its domestic oil prices. However, when it comes to trade with its European allies, it offered different logic. Has the US helped lower the price tag when selling LNG to Europe? On the same day the OPEC announcement came out, German Vice Chancellor Robert Habeck criticized the astronomical gas prices charged by friendly supplier countries such as the US, suggesting they were profiting from the fallout of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. One day after Habeck's comment, French President Emmanuel Macron, and I quote, "In the spirit of great friendship, we will say to our American and Norwegian friends, you are super. You supply us with energy and gas, but one thing that cannot go on for too long is us paying 4 times more than the price you sell to your industry. That is not exactly the meaning of friendship." Later on, French economy and finance minister Bruno Le Maire also condemned the US publicly. He said, "We must not allow the conflict in Ukraine to result in American economic domination and a weakening of Europe. We cannot accept that our American partner sells its LNG at 4 times the price at which it sells to its own companies." In the face of a high energy crisis, people living in Europe are seeking all kinds of ways to getting through the coming winter.
这个不是今年用的，这个是明年要用的，因为那个木头必须要放到外面1年的，会变好一点，会变硬一点的。
This is Gregory Solis, a French vlogger and businessman, introducing to his Chinese fans how his family is preparing for winter. I've also invited him to join us today. Welcome, Greg.
Hey, nice to see you.
So, Greg, can you tell us about your family's energy consumption plan for this coming up winter? How different is it from previous years?
We won't use gas this year at home because we have the possibility to switch from wood to gas. So according to the eventual possibility that the gas will increase, because we actually don't know the prices at the moment, we only use this year. So I said on a regular basis we have to switch, but this year we only use wood. So it's going to be more like from 6 to 10 cubic meters. So we actually plan to use a little bit more wood at the moment. But I know that some of the countries cannot deal with this, and some of my neighbors actually only use electricity or gas. So they have no other choices. We are lucky. We have some lands where we have forests, so we can cut wood. But I know that most people don't have the chance. So people will basically use 80% of electricity and maybe 20% of gas. I guess that would be the balance be done. But we will do only the wood part. But we are lucky ones, should I say.
So, apart from households, do public sectors and services also get affected by the shortage of energy in Europe?
Indeed. All the public service will definitely suffer from that. The government will try to push on some help on the public system to try to reduce the use of electricity. All the shopping malls where we actually suffer from the same issue this summer when we have the global heat in France, where they ask people not to use the air conditioner anymore. So I think all the different shopping malls, public areas, and things like that, they're already used to not using and not consuming too much. So I think they will definitely reduce the temperature, as I told you, maybe not to 19 degrees, but probably to 20 degrees, something like, which would be probably enough to compensate the 10% increase of the price. So.
How about other France's neighboring countries? How are they holding out?
I think that will be a major issue for German people because I think the government doesn't help at the same level as the French government do. The only thing is they are dependent on the Russian gas, which is, I think, more than 50%. I don't know about the actual price of gas in Germany, but basically from the few friends that I have in Germany, they don't really know what's going to happen. They are really, really scared about the situation. So they start to buy some heating blankets that you put on the bed at home. They try to buy some really warm clothes at the moment. And especially winter in Germany is a lot colder than here. So they might face a very, very terrible issue at the moment. So I'm kind of worrying for them.
All right, thank you, Greg. Let's talk about some other countries. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban also spoke out. He warned against dependence on the US in an interview. And this is what he said. In the longer term, the European interest is not to replace Russian energy dependence with US energy dependence. So, how much does the current European gas market depend on the US? Well, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken recently said the current situation presents a tremendous opportunity. At this juncture, the US has ramped up its LNG production and exports to Europe.
So we've significantly increased our production as well as making available to Europe liquefied natural gas. And we're now the leading supplier of LNG to Europe.
Thanks to surging demand in Europe, the US rose to become the world's largest LNG exporter in the first half of this year. The US exported 39 billion cubic meters of LNG to Europe, accounting for nearly 70% of the amount exported in the period, exceeding last year's total to Europe. In terms of prices, according to recent data from International Energy Agency, in the third quarter, European benchmark Dutch TTF gas futures almost doubled over the previous quarter and were more than 8 times their 5-year average for this period of this year. Prices spiked to all-time highs in August. Blinken also acknowledged that there is a lot of hard work to do for Europe.
My own sense, and I mentioned this the other day, is look, there's a lot of hard work to do to make sure that countries and partners get through the winter. Europe itself has taken very significant steps.
So how much has the U.S. profited from Europe's shift to its LNG?
Saying the U.S. is actually benefiting in 2 different ways from what's happening. You covered LNG to some degree, but Europe, unfortunately, is seeing energy-intensive industry migrating out. And migrating especially to the U.S. We've seen fertilizer companies in particular going into the southeast, the southwest. Europe is closing down zinc smelting, aluminum smelting. We don't think the price of natural gas is going to get anywhere near where U.S. levels are in Europe until 2026, 2027, when enough LNG is available to substitute for the lost Russian gas. So the U.S. industry and the U.S. economy is benefiting while Europe suffers.
Amid Europe's energy crisis, manufacturers are seeking to move overseas. So, Greg, is this also something happened around you as well?
Yeah, definitely. And in France we have a 20.6% taxes on everything you buy. So the increase is actually percentage also by the energy crisis. So it's like 20.6% plus the increase of gas and electricity with such a very expensive cost for most companies. So I think even if it hasn't been done yet, most companies are considering right now to switch to another continent. Yeah, I think this is probably what's going to happen in the next 10 years. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Greg. So speaking of U.S. profits, an energy investment banker told a Business Insider that U.S. can fill a large ship and send it across the Atlantic for around $60 million, with the cargo then fetching around $275 million in Europe. This means that American companies could be making over $100 million on each shipment to Europe. A head of analysis at Voxa agreed with the estimate, suggesting that companies could be making around $150 million on each shipment. However, as the withering winter approaches, Europe's most pressing dilemma is that buying natural gas to meet people's needs is ever growing, no matter the price. The strategic consideration of U.S. energy diplomacy also affect areas outside of Europe and the Middle East. The global natural gas market has reportedly been showing signs of a wealth gap between the rich and the poor. Some developing countries have noticed in the past few months that in the race to purchase LNG, they simply can't compete with those deeper pocket European buyers. Citing Pakistan and Bangladesh as examples in a recent report, the International Energy Agency concluded both countries face acute fuel shortages and power cuts in today's very tight global LNG market. For instance, compared to European countries such as Belgium, which saw its import from US LNG swell by some 650%, Pakistan, however, saw its US imports decline by 72%. A gas analyst told Financial Times that countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh have been hanging on and been paying as much as they can in this bidding war, mainly with Europe, on spot cargoes. And from an environmental perspective, the imbalance has the potential not only to push some emerging economies into an energy crisis, but also in countries such as India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh to prolong their reliance on dirtier forms of fuel. The United States' focus on oil and gas has long influenced its foreign policy. Although it's natural for a country to seek to protect its own national interests, it is important to know the difference. Energy diplomacy is not the same as energy dominance. How have countries around the world received the notion of energy dominance? Well, I believe not many countries enjoy the idea of being dominated. Also, isn't this approach contradictory to the system of free and open energy markets that the US has advocated for decades? With the growing number of countries openly complaining about US actions, one thing to take into account is, when you fail in diplomacy, you lose the trust and credibility earned over generations. Alright, that's all for today. Thanks for watching. I'm Sina, and if you like our show, please click like and subscribe. And also, leave your comments down below and tell us how you think. I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.